There's a guy called Arida Goyce, and I'll do it in Goyce. You have to do it with an affliction of the throat because he's Dutch. He wrote a book about, he came out of Shell. Shell were big into scenario planning, and he looked at what was it that meant you had longevity in organizations. Because if you look at the typical life of a company, 10 years, 20 years, possibly 40. It tails off relatively quickly. But he was finding some companies that were 200 years old, and they'd adapted. And they'd changed. You know, Toyota used to be a sewing machine company. And he suggests that your ability to learn faster than your competitors may be your only sustainable competitive advantage. So the question becomes, how do we recognize that our strategy is wrong? Because actually strategy is not a theory, it's not provable, it's a hypothesis. It's a belief you're going with. This is our belief about the best way to execute and make success and make money or deliver services or whatever in our market, in our sector to our beneficiaries. Now, you won't be able to try it ever again because the circumstances will never be the same. So you go with what you've got, but you have to refine it. Now the catch is, most organisations are coming down this loop going, I'll spend 2 or 3 months at the beginning or last quarter of the year planning what we're going to do for the next 12 months. You know this one, a forecast is not a target. I'll say that again, a forecast is not a target. Just because you forecast something is likely to be a particular figure doesn't make it a target. Yet, to some extent, budgeting causes that, does that. You do have to be very careful about that. Because what happens is we have that 12th quarter of strategy and then the next 9 months are executing and we'll go into strategy again. And unfortunately, that doesn't work. Well, it works-ish. But if an organisation is not paying attention to the very first slide, they do a little bit of strategy at one point and then they spend the next 9 months in operational detail, there's a good chance they're missing something. So the question is, how do we learn? How do we recognise our strategy is wrong? We have to ask ourselves some questions. And the first question is, have we communicated our strategy? Have we got that message out? The reason I wrote my book, Communicating Strategy, here you go guys, here it is, it exists, is I read on the internet some advice that went, don't tell your staff your strategy because they'll only give it away to your competitors. Frankly, this is baloney. If your strategy is so weak and pathetic that your competitor can immediately copy it, you haven't got a strategy at all. And you don't have a chance of executing it if your staff don't know about it. You've got to get it out to them. I also have a saying in there, all plans should be burnt. This really hacks off the auditors, but I don't care. Let me tell you the logic of this. It's very simple. Your staff and you are executing strategy now, every day, in everything they do. I bet you're not looking at the plan. You're executing it. So if you haven't already got it in your heads, it's a complete waste of time. So you might as well burn it. And if it is in your heads and you are executing it, you can safely burn it. So my test is all plans should be burnt. You have to be careful because the chief executive, a client I was working with, actually went, and I'd like to set fire to this. And he looked up and saw in front of the staff of 70 in this hotel that there was actually one of those smoke detectors above. And darn, he said, I'll have to rip it up, and ripped up his plans, threw it over on the floor, and then just talked for 25 minutes, 45 minutes about what they were doing. Much more effective. Because if you tell the story of the strategy to people, get it across, tell it with emotion, tell it with truth, tell it with sincerity, don't just give them the paper. They'll understand it. And then set the values and norms. But then you have to be very careful. You have to be careful to do several things. One is check your strategy is working. Because it might be something you've done wrong. You might not have given the resources out. It might be the right strategy, not quite executed properly. Or it could be that part of your strategy isn't working. If you believe something about a way a product should work or a particular area should be developed, maybe you got it wrong. So you should be testing and checking your strategy. There's a thing we use called strategy maps. As I said, I used to work for Norton and Kaplan. The balanced scorecard is merely the scorecard piece. The strategy map part is the bit where we articulate the strategy and look for the cause and effect model. We believe our capabilities, skills and knowledge will change the way we do things, which will mean we'll keep our customers happy, which will get us more money. Maybe you got the wrong lever at the bottom. So things won't change, aren't changing as quickly as you should expect to. So you might have to do something differently. There's another thing in here actually. If you cover up the middle of this, you end up with future thinking at the top. Where do you want to go? Organisational values at the bottom. What's our underlying principle about how we do things? And the environment. That space in the middle is what leadership is about creating, the space to perform. If you cover up core values, future thinking and external environment, you end up simply with strategy, alignment, operations. That's management. Leadership and management together.